Welcome everyone to another Wisdom of the Heart video episodes. And today we have a very special guest joining us, Glenn Hovemann, who is joining us from the outskirts of Nevada City, California. And many of you know out there that Glenn is the publisher of the combined volume of A Course of Love through his company, Take Heart Publications. And let me just hold this up for a second here. This is, I don't know if you can see it that well. This is the combined volume, and it's a second edition of A Course of Love. The first receiver is Perron, and it includes all the three books, the course, the treatises, and the dialogues. And Glenn is also the publisher of Choose Only Love, which is a whole series of 7 volumes that's been scribed by Sebastián Blaksley, and that's out there on Amazon in the 7 different books. And then recently, there's a brand new publication that Glenn, through his company, Take Heart. It's called The Age of the Heart, and that's also been scribed through Sebastián Blaksley. So, welcome, Glenn, to the Wisdom of the Heart. It's your first time ever.
It is my first time ever, and it's very sweet of you to invite me. I'm not really somebody who likes to go out there in the public eye a whole lot, but you invited me, and it was sincere, and I thought that it might be helpful. And by the way, I would not use the word special about me in any way. I just do what I do because I'm called to do it.
Yeah, I invited Glenn because, so he can speak and everyone can see him and hear a little bit from him. And my reason for inviting Glenn is just to get some of his experience with his journey into A Course of Love. And recently, Glenn had written a little article in the Embrace newsletter, the 100th edition. It was published in July, and we can put that link in the description. But that was the first time that Glenn had written something for the Embrace newsletter, and he's never done a video. So to get started here, I wanted to say that Glenn, he has a very extensive background in A Course in Miracles. I believe if you want to say a few words about that, you're welcome.
So I suppose I should start at the very beginning. But I will try to make this quick. When I was in utero, okay, we're talking about 1947 and 1948, my mom was reading, hot off the press, Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi. So that, I guess, just got in my blood. I was raised in a tiny church in New York City, which was founded by a medium. And I heard the words of Jesus from the Bible, from the pulpit. I really loved it. There was no cross in this church. Instead, there was a banner up front that simply said, God is love. And so time went on. I got really interested in New Thought. And then I co-founded a community, an intentional community in Oregon. And in 1978, a visitor came. I did not know her, no particular relationship at all. I don't think I ever saw her again. But she came up to me with these 3 blue hardback books, of which this is one. Mm-hmm. This is just the text. So between the text and the workbook and the manual for teachers, this was a major lift. And she said, she didn't say anything about it. She just said, Glenn, I know these are for you. Please take them. So I did. And so I didn't know it was through Jesus or anything like that. But as soon as I started reading them, I recognized the voice. I simply recognized the voice. I knew it was true. I also knew I didn't understand it, but I knew it was true. My soul felt somehow or other that there was more. And so I would search online. Okay, we'll search a little more, search a little bit here. And one day I found the website for a conference that had been in October, I think, of 2012. I was on the website on March 1st of 2013. And I knew most of the speakers. It was a small conference. I knew most of the speakers, but I did not know this woman, Mari Perron. So I listened to what she had to say, and I looked up, about her and what she had published, and I found she had self-published at that point. She had self-published A Course of Love in 3 volumes. I bought them all 3 right away. Figured, I'll read these, in the next couple of weeks. But I realized I cannot speed read the truth. So I had to fend off my wife while I was reading A Course of Love. And I just recognized the voice. I knew it was true. That fall, I think it was October. I used to live in Minnesota. I went to the University of Minnesota. So I was familiar with the territory, and Mari Perron lived there. So I figured I'd go and visit her.
I noticed when you wrote the article in July for the Embrace, you said, you knew that Mari had, scribed another spiritual masterpiece, and that had, gone into the spiritual territory, continuation into the spiritual territory of A Course in Miracles. I just wanted to hear, like, when you first read The Course of Love in all 3 volumes, Mari had self-published the course, the treatises, and the dialogue. So 3 separate. Is there anything like that super inspired you? Like, what was it, that sort of drew you in? I know you said you heard Jesus's voice, you recognized it, but was there anything else? And then we can get to your visit, because
yeah. Well, what it was, in a nutshell, what it was it reached my heart in a way that, even though the workbook of Course in Miracles was there, nevertheless, A Course of Love reached my heart in a way that I hadn't been touched before. And also, when I was reading it, I'd sometimes say, really? Really? And then I go back to the beginning of that chapter and reread it. I said, wow, because it was different from some of the concepts that I had through A Course in Miracles. I had studied with Ken Wapnick and a bunch of other people, but it was different from some of the concepts. To me, it was clearly true, just clearly true. So it was an intuitive thing. Yeah. So yeah.
I'm hearing that it was this heart experience you had, like something in your heart, like went into your heart and it opened.
Absolutely. And, that motivated me, and because I realized, well, Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford were no longer, I couldn't go visit them, but Mari Perron was still around, and she was in territory, Minnesota, that I was comfortable, familiar with. So I think, okay. And so I arranged with her to visit for a long weekend. On the Monday of that weekend, she just kind of out of the blue, a complete non sequitur, she asked me whether I would publish A Course of Love. And my first response was, well, no, Mari, that's not what I do. My wife and I had, for 20 years, owned a publishing company, but it was all about nature and children's books. It wasn't anything overtly spiritual. So I kind of said, and I demurred. But when I got to the hotel that evening, it sort of like lived in me. That question lived in me. Oh, really? So the following morning, before I went to the airport, I called her and I said, Mari, did you mean what you said? She said, yes. Okay. So I meditated about that on the way home and so on. I talked with my wife, Muffy, and we both just deeply considered it. And we agreed that if all the lights turned green, we'd do it. the major light that needed to turn green was our staff. We just had a few people on our staff, and we weren't going to publish something, like A Course of Love unless they agreed with it. Well, they all did. They all did.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went ahead. We created a separate company, Take Heart Publications, because it needed a different name. And so eventually, when we sold that other company with the children's books, we just retained Take Heart Publications. Take Heart is a nonprofit, I should say. I don't get any income whatsoever. In fact, I'm a big donor with my time and money, but I don't get any income. And many, many, many people like you, Lynn, and translators and lots of other people who do awesome things on behalf of A Course of Love are just doing it out of love. I mean, this is something that is propelled by, it's not like we don't have expenses and we do need donations, but it's primarily propelled by love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of volunteers out there. And, also something when you had written in the July Embrace newsletter, you were speaking to how you had formed and created the newsletter in order for it to be a dialogue experience for all of us to share, ourselves. And that's what I love about this community, because everyone just loves to come together with, the Zoom groups, and there's in-person groups and Zoom groups, just to share our hearts and our experiences. And
it is so sweet. It's not like there's debates about anything. And in fact, one of the things I want to say is that when I first, was working with Mari, I knew the history. I knew some of the history of A Course in Miracles and how much of it, a huge amount, had been edited by Helen and Ken, and I knew the controversies that had arisen out of that, and I didn't want to go there. So I asked Mari to go back to the very first disc or whatever form she had it on her computer at that time, and unedit. In other words, just go right from the very beginning and be sure that any later on edits, which some had occurred in publication through another publisher of just the first volume. So she was totally cooperative. She basically unedited A Course of Love. So it is like the original. It's what came through. I came to really admire and trust Mari as a receiver. She's a fabulous receiver. Some receivers have their own agendas, and certainly Helen Schuckman, bless her, who did a fantastic job. Nevertheless, she had a lot going on, and she was kind of embarrassed professionally by this thing. And Mari wasn't in that position. And Mari was a devout Catholic. So what came through her, I have a high degree of confidence that it was just as it came through. I do not feel anything, as I have with some other spiritual books that are channeled, but I do not feel anything that is her as opposed to Jesus.
Yeah, I got that too in reading A Course of Love. I didn't feel like there was a lot of like personal self, and there were actually, not, I'm going to say not a lot, but there was no personal self injected into it. It's like I didn't hear Mari. I heard, like you said, the voice of the Christ. She was channeling the Christ, as the same, right. Helen Schuckman, channeled the Christ. But anyway, right. The other thing I was going to ask you before we move on is, like, you want to share, like, when you first met Mari, like, what was it like to meet Mari for the first time?
Well, it was a delightful experience. We had dinner. We had another friend of hers there. Then on that particular Monday, she and I went out to Como Park in St. Paul, a beautiful place. So we just had a lovely time. So she was and we visited in the car and all that. Very approachable, very kind, didn't put on any airs. I like her.
Yeah.
I like her a lot.
You liked her, yeah. Okay.
And she does not pretend. I love this about her. She doesn't pretend to know it all. I think she knows it in a very deep way. But in terms of quoting parts of it or anything like that, that's not where her mind goes.
Right.
She's just very, I would say she's very pure, and her mind works like a receiver's mind rather than, an analytical writer's mind.
Yeah, I get that too. And she knows the essence of it. And she's in this non-conceptual awareness. And sometimes when I've heard her speak before, she can't find the right words, to describe it, because it's like so in her heart, it's not coming through here. She doesn't find all the words, and she doesn't want to analyze or try to conceptualize it. Course of Love, it says, as you noted in the Embrace newsletter, it's a continuation of the spiritual territory that was begun in A Course in Miracles. And so, do you want to say anything about that?
If you're in your mind, you can find ways of saying, well, this isn't what A Course in Miracles says, and, I disagree with that, or whatever. And there are some ways where Jesus is he's a very capable teacher. And part of that capacity is to be a little bit confrontative. And, like he uses the word insane quite a lot, especially in A Course in Miracles. And so, like in one of the things he did in the Course of Love is he said the age of the Holy Spirit, or the time of the Holy Spirit, is over. Well, wow. What a great way to raise a lot of hackles.
Yeah, really.
And yet what he's saying is the Holy Spirit, which it says in A Course in Miracles, the Holy Spirit is the inner awareness, okay? Which a lot of people who are still in their minds project outward as an exterior voice. So what he's saying by the time the Holy Spirit is over, he's saying the time has come when we need to go within and listen within. Well, now that's where the Holy Spirit is. But we don't want to put labels on it anymore. Yeah. We can. It's fine as long as you understand. Because even Choose Only Love. I mean, here's, Choose Only Love. It uses, and then that's also through Sebastian, but from Jesus. A lot of it's from Jesus, some through Mother Mary. And it uses the term Holy Spirit, and it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it, as long as we understand that the Holy Spirit is within. It's not an external voice.
Yeah.
So that's just one example, but it's a big one.
It's huge, and I'm so glad I asked that question. I'm so glad you answered it, because I feel the same way. Holy Spirit, the voice for God, the true self, capital S, which you see that a lot in A Course of Love, and it is it's about having that direct relationship, with the inner voice. It's not listening to a voice that's separate from us, and it's truly a heart experience, the mind and the heart joined in this wholeheartedness, and we're truly listening, and I want to say feeling as well, because the feeling is an inspiration there. The clarity comes, and it doesn't really come always. It's not just thoughts we do not think, which is that Mari spoke to, how these come from unity. They're not coming from the thinking mind. But that inner awareness is an experience.
I'm glad you mentioned the word feeling.
Yeah.
And that is also one of the distinctions, I think, between A Course in Miracles and A Course of Love. Because through this wholeheartedness, the joining, the integrating of the mind and the heart is the center of feeling. It's our access to the divine. And so in A Course of Love, he talks quite a lot that there are no feelings that are bad. Anger, fear, I mean, yeah, they may be wrong in certain ways, but they're not bad. And not only are they not bad, but it's very important to feel them fully. Because unless they're felt fully, viscerally experienced for what they are, they will stay alive in our psyche. And they will be, they will come up again and again and again as an impediment to spiritual awareness. So feelings are really, really important.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's huge in A Course of Love.
I love A Course in Miracles, and I consider Course in Miracles and A Course of Love to be a unit, basically. I mean, a lot of people don't feel that way, but I consider them to be absolutely intertwined. And I, especially for the workbook, I still go back frequently and just appreciate some of those magnificent workbook lessons.
There's questions out there. The second edition, did you want to say just a few words, like the revisions that were made in the second edition? Because many of us who were reading it before 2019 is when the second edition was published. We're still reading it out of, using the first edition, but there are things that come up, especially in the 40 days, where the little s self has been changed to capital S, and it does change the meaning of the sentence. So did you want to say briefly about that? Yeah.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. Back in 2014, when Mari and I were working on this, we really wanted to get it out. And it would take an enormous amount of time to just really, really, really carefully proofread it. I needed to get it out. I just needed to get it out. So, and later on, after it was out, I realized that there were a number of places where there was some ambiguity. Especially a good example is whether it's a lowercase self or an uppercase self, because in A Course of Love that makes a difference. And so I asked Mari to go through, and I pulled out a number of examples, but I did a check through the whole manuscript. And I called her attention to every instance where there was a self, which was in any way ambiguous. And so she provided the changes that appear in the second edition. A very few other little changes here and there, but again, just for clarification only. The other major change that really required a new edition, as opposed to simply a new printing, was the inclusion of the dialogue unveiled. Because at some point, Mari was talking with me, and she says, "What about dialogue unveiled?" And I said, "What's that?" "What's that?" And she says, "Oh, it had been on my website, long ago." And I said, "Well, okay, well, that's great, but whatever." So in the meantime, we had published the first edition without it. So then she sent it to me. I recognized immediately how important it was. And so we agreed to include it prominently in the second edition. We also agreed to take the three parts of the Time of Christ and put them at the back of each book, as opposed to all together at the back. A few little minor additions, things like that. But the big one was the inclusion of dialogue unveiled.
Okay, yeah, dialogue unveiled, and learning in the Time of Christ, each of the three parts behind each of the three books, respectively. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, and
yeah. And so, I have many. I still use the old one. I have multiple copies that are all marked up.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But it's perfectly okay. It doesn't matter.
I usually recognize it, from the first edition, and I check the second edition, and most of the times, like, yeah, my intuition's right that this is supposed to be the, capital S self or whatever. And there's a little, sometimes it says one thing about feelings and emotions, and then it looks a little different later on. But I love your, what do you call it? Your advice or whatever, your input, your insight, and to take it all lightly and just see the essence of it, right? That's like, what is the real message that's coming through here? And not, not picking it apart. Yeah.
So I relate to A Course of Love, and also Choose Only Love, and also The Age of the Heart, as more transmissions than texts. I know, I mean, somehow they are designed to reach the heart through the eyes, through the mind, but reaching the heart. And so when the mind gets involved about, what does this mean? What does this mean? My advice is just calm the mind down, go on. It will probably clarify itself in due time. If you want to go back and parse that, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just take it in as a whole through the heart. Because I am aware of some people who have tried to read A Course of Love, and it's being very challenging to them because they're reading it like a text.
Yeah.
And it's
reading it from up here. Yeah, exactly. Learning an Atomic Christ, where Maury says, her channeling from, the Christ voice says, hear these words like a friend is speaking to you and let the words enter you.
Exactly. So I appreciate the opportunity that you just mentioned to choose only love. This is volume 7 out of 7. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are before this. It's a lot of words. Choose Only Love is different from it's through Sebastián. Again, it's channel material. Sebastián's channelings are a little different in the sense that both Helen Schuckman and Mike Perron received clear word-by-word dictations. Sebastián received an instantaneous download 144 times, which was in symbolic form, like it was sounds and it was images and whatever. It was in symbols, and he didn't understand that immediately, but then Archangel Raphael helped him put it into words, first in Spanish, and then again in English, not as a translation, but as another go in English. It's not a course. It's not a course. In that way, it's somewhat unlike A Course in Miracles and A Course of Love. It's how I feel about Choose Only Love is that, to me, it's more like sitting in the lap of Mother Mary. Or the lap of Jesus, and just having this intimate conversation. And yes, there's a lot of words, a lot of ideas that are brought forth, and so on. But it's all very, very intimate. I think it's another masterpiece. And then, thank you for the opportunity to let's see. There we go. The Age of the Heart. This book is also through Sebastián. It's a little different in the sense that it's very, how shall we say, it's very terrestrial. Whereas A Course of Love and even A Course in and Choose Only Love are kind of like, whoa, the big picture. The Age of the Heart, subtitled The Birth of a New Heaven and a New Earth, are really about both the personal and the global experience of what's happening right now, because we all recognize that some big shifts are underway. And this is all about it. What's happening both globally, with the nations, with the social systems, with the financial, justice systems, the whole thing, how those are going to be completely redone. And personally as well, how the consciousness of each of us is also being redone.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that about Choose Only Love and The Age of the Heart. And that was recently published, can be found on Amazon. So yeah, Glenn, thank you so much for joining. Is there any last minute insights, or maybe thoughts you do not think are coming through?
We were talking about primarily about A Course of Love, and so I wanted to read something.
Okay, great.
It's real quick. It's from my favorite chapter, chapter 20. The Embrace. Miracles are expressions of love. You might think of them as acts of cooperation. It is in the cooperation between unique expressions of love that creation continues and miracles become natural occurrences. This cooperation is natural when fear has been rejected. there are no opposing forces that are not in agreement about their opposing force. No atoms do battle. No molecules compete for dominance. The universe is a dance of cooperation. You are but asked to rejoin the dance. I really resonate with the universe as an extremely cooperative. It changes. It's changing magnificently. It's morphing in a sense. And that's because it's not the brick and mortar stuff that we might think it is. It's energy. It's cooperative. It's cooperative between us and the unseen realms. So
yeah,
that's how miracles happen.
That's beautiful, Glenn. Thanks for sharing that. I like that too. It's like a dance of cooperation. Yeah. Harmony, unity, whatever. But yeah, that was beautiful. So, okay.
It's time to join the dance.
Thanks again so much, Glenn, for joining. And thanks to our viewers out there. And peace, love, grace, and blessings to all of you. Namaste.
Love you.